We did get rather splattered, didn't we, Jenna, with
an unknown substance, which was the colour of cider, but I'll let people's imagination do more.
You pair of legends, nice one. Sorry, I thought I'd channel Liam.
When they split, I mean, it genuinely felt a bit like, a bit of rock and roll had died, didn't it?
See them there was quite like, whoa, this is a bit out of body, and then it's the music chimes in and you're like, whoa, we're going. And I don't know if he accidentally sort of insulted my name when I introduced myself and he asked me what kind of name was that.
Thank you for joining me. I'm here with Diane Bourne and Jenna Campbell from our What's On team. Thank you for joining me, you pair of legends, nice one. Sorry, I thought I'd channel Liam for this conversation about Oasis. Can we bleep that, please? Is that okay? So we're joining to have a chat about Oasis because rumours are swirling about these dates next year, aren't they? Actually, should we...
You've not addressed the elephant in the room here, have you, Beth?
We've
got the hats on in honour, in tribute.
Yeah.
Last year it was Bucket Hat A Go-Go, wasn't it?
Bucket Hat A Go-Go. And you've got your parka on.
Yeah, I've got this again, channeling Liam, because I can't believe, but he did actually wear his parka every single night of the tour, even when it was like 30 degrees in Heaton Park.
It was boiling, wasn't it?
It was very, very hot. But yeah, this is going to come off. Are they coming off now?
They're coming off. That's Liam's Burnage stoicism showing through, I think, isn't it? Yeah, let's take them off. Right, okay. Everyone do the hair.
Oh.
Come on, quick, there we go. Right, so let's talk about these rumours that are swirling about next year and the dates that might be happening at the Etihad.
Well, the whole world's talking about it now, aren't they? But yeah,
thanks to you.
Well,
Diane.
In small part from what we've been covering. But yeah, it's these 12 nights, isn't it, at the Etihad that's kind of set the cat among the pigeons. It sounds like a lot of gigs, but to be honest, I think they could sell out more. But it's now coming out, they could do Nebworth as well. People are talking about Glastonbury. It's inconceivable, really, that they would not do another world tour after what we saw in 2025, because it was extraordinary scenes, wasn't it?
It really was, wasn't it? And I guess if they go to the Etihad, home of City, that'll be hugely significant for them, won't it, as massive City fans?
Absolutely. Obviously, 2026 is 30 years since the main road gigs, the two they did then, and then the Nebworth gigs as well.
You say obviously, that's your factoids through, isn't
which I have many.
Yeah.
That actually wasn't written on my thing, that's just from up here.
Okay.
So 2026, 30 years on, so prior to this one, and when there was rumours originally, people did say, would it be Nebworth as well? Obviously, the way things have fallen, it means that, we're looking at next year, but regardless, to go to the Etihad, which is now the home of Man City, would be huge for them, for Noel and Liam, as huge City fans themselves. And it just makes sense that they would do there, really. It wasn't quite ready this year. We have had gigs now, but for them. So I think it would make perfect sense for them to do it. And obviously there's rumours as well about Nebworth as well, and also other European locations that they didn't make it to on this tour. So there's still a lot of gap for stuff they haven't done. There's Glastonbury rumours as well, isn't there? So there's a lot of potential for lots of stuff next year from them.
Well, really, this is an excuse for us to reminisce about last summer, isn't it? And now that you two have got over your PTSD of dealing with the busiest summer you've ever had as What's On journalists, can we talk about that summer? Let's start with the build-up and the scramble to get tickets. How difficult was that, Jenna?
Really difficult. We were saying just how many millions of people, like globally, it was something like 14 million, and it was, several million here in the UK as well, just because it had been so long since they had, done something, and there were so many rumours going around. We were saying that, the Blossoms gig at Within Shore Park, it flashed up on the screen, the big sort of like teaser of when they were going to announce something,
And you saw that, you were there,
yeah,
didn't you?
and we saw that. So, and we, that video went out and loads of people jumped on that, went all across the world, because there was something palpable building. And then it happens, it gets announced the next week. Not long after Manchester Pride, and there's just a complete flurry. Everybody wants that ticket. We were saying as well, like, there's lots of codes that go out now, isn't there? There's always a pre-sale. General, so it's like very confusing. But there was like, do you know the original drummer, and all these like, you must know these factoids about Oasis to get tickets. And then it came to actually getting tickets, and as I've said before, like the absolute rush to get them. And I also tried to get them regardless of our work here and stuff, but took it to the pub, my laptop, almost took it on the tram. It was that desperate to get it, but I think
Whilst
it was
you
on
were in
5
the
hours.
waiting room, the
I
digital
was in the
waiting
digital
room.
waiting room of
Yeah.
hell. That seemingly never got smaller for me. But I think, people that try and get tickets often, when you get into the hundreds of thousands in a waiting room, you just think this is just not worth it.
Yeah.
But weirdly, some people I heard did it and then they just automatically got through then.
Yeah.
And then we got to the whole ticket pricing issue and the supposed dynamic pricing, which has been looked into. People were paying about 150 and then it shot up to 355, which is a massive expenditure. We know how expensive gigs are anyway.
Yeah.
I think we were expecting in the hundreds, but that's that's a lot of money, and obviously it got looked into by the FCA and the Ombudsman, and now as we go forward, supposedly it is that ticket sites do need to be more transparent about the pricing structures and what people might be paying up to, which I think is a good thing if they can stick to it.
So do you think people won't have the same problem when they come to the Etihad, or will they?
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, they could play the whole of June, the whole of July next year in Manchester at the Etihad, and that people would still not be able to get tickets for those gigs. It would be absolute gold dust. Yeah. And especially to see them on home turf, it is always extra special. You can see how much Manchester means to those guys. I mean, when they walked out at Heaton Park, what did Noel Gallagher say straight away on that first night? It was, "This is the place. This is the place." And that's the thing, isn't it? Manchester is the place. We know it. And, hence the podcast we're doing. So, yeah, the fact that people might be able to see them for multiple nights there, yes, hopefully it will mean more tickets. But it's going to be the biggest scramble, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get hold of a ticket. But I mean, how much would you pay? Like, I was thinking about that because, for me, I would pay £200 to see them again.
My friend went to Japan as well. Wow. She loved it so much. She went to Japan to watch them. So literally thousands. And now she's got about 7 Oasis t-shirts and she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but it was lovely. So, yeah, people will. It's all over the world.
It's a lifetime event for people to go and see them because they mean so much to people, and that's what we're going to see again.
And with that in mind, can you, because you've covered Manchester music for such a long time, and not that long, sorry, sounded rude, for a while, and can you explain what it was like, sort of Oasis back in the day, back in the 90s, and why it was so devastating when they broke up and why this is such a big thing for them to get back together?
Well, I mean, Oasis were the band of the 1990s. I mean, I grew up on them, everyone at university at the time when I was first into them. But they went global, didn't they? And it was not just the music, it was their image, it was the fact that it was those brothers at the heart of it. People bought into that relationship, didn't they? And it became tabloid fodder, the arguments between the brothers. But unfortunately that's what led them to split, wasn't it? It just imploded. So, in 2009 when they did split, is that right? Is that the right date?
Yeah,
could be
2009. After the festival in France.
Consult your notes.
Here we are. Consult the notes. Yeah. It feels like 2009, but so much has happened, hasn't it? But anyway, when they split, I mean, it genuinely felt a bit like a bit of rock and roll had died, didn't it? So to have them back, I mean, in terms of comebacks, we had the Stone Roses comeback and that was huge. But in terms of bands coming back, it could only really be Oasis and the Smiths that would make any kind of impact like this. Yeah. And so that Oasis comeback was the biggest thing I've ever known, for them to come back. And Manchester's got Oasis and Liverpool's got the Beatles, haven't they? But they go around the world. Those names, Oasis, Manchester, it sort of puts Manchester on the world map again, doesn't it? As well as football, it's Oasis. People know that all over the world now.
And that excitement was really palpable last summer, wasn't it? All over the city and the city region. All over the UK because they played various different places, didn't they? I think you guys went to the first gig in Cardiff and saw it there. What was that like, that first gig and seeing them walk on stage together?
I mean, it was spine-tingling. Just the build-up to that and obviously the start of the gig with the music... the roar of the crowd, and they did it really well, didn't they? With the way they built it up, with the screens flashing, the guns are falling silent. It took your breath away. And I mean, I was there, and there was literally grown adults crying. There was grown men, big burly men, all hugging each other, literally crying when they came out on stage. But it was so emotional.
Yeah.
I've not felt anything like that. Even as I've covered the Stone Roses coming back, but I didn't feel quite like this. It was crazy. And when they walked out and obviously, they held their hands aloft, it was just so emotional because, of course, on a human level, it's the brothers back together as well, as much as the band, isn't it? And of course, Bonehead as well. You know, it's not just the Gallaghers. We've got the three of them on stage there. But yeah, from then on, it was just people could not believe what they were seeing, and every song, it just felt like you were a part of history that night. That's how it felt.
I mean, there was such a huge build-up. Obviously, you've explained how difficult it was to get tickets, and people had about 10 devices out trying to get them, you know, like Sandra Bullock in the Net. Other Sandra Bullock films are available. And nobody will know what I'm talking about there. But anyway, and there was all kinds of, you know, like corporates kind of clocked it, didn't they? Like Aldi changed their name to Alde in Prestwich, and there was that lasagna with like Liam's face on it, and there was all this really bizarre stuff.
What were the Berghain-esque jackets?
Oh yes,
Parkers,
the little ones. Yeah.
Obviously,
yeah.
the collab with Adidas as well.
Adidas, huge.
Adidas, I don't know. But anyway, there was loads of that, but there was also. It was also like organic, wasn't it? Like the excitement around town and around Prestwich, because people could sit in their back gardens, they could hear the gigs. Everyone was just so excited. There were murals popping up. It just felt like a really summer of Oasis, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, it definitely felt very special being by Heaton Park the day, also going back then into Northern Quarter. I remember like doing the whole day in outside Heaton Park on the Friday for the first gig, and then staying in Prestwich that night, having 3 hours sleep. We started writing again next morning with all the stuff that we'd seen because there was just so much to say and write about, and then going into Manchester for lunchtime and the Northern Quarter just swelling with people. Like that's quite emotional to see that as someone that's from a place. I think about events that we've had in the last few years, whether it's the Brits, MTV, Co-op opening, Aviva opening, Chanel. Like we've had some huge events, and like it's a privilege to cover them, but there was something about this that was very like really quite special. And I think speaking to people as well, everyone was in such a good mood. There wasn't like any like crosswords, no one was really overdoing it. Like, you know, I'd speak to people outside, and it was cross-generational as well, people that were too young actually to remember them, but you know, their parents had brought them up on it and they'd remembered it in the car, or the Ostrich Pup in Prestwich, they could hear the gigs from where they were, and they've said to us since then it's been huge for business for us. Like people know us now, they know we've got this big beer garden, or the Definitely Maybe bar as well, that opened just at the right time. They've gone international now as well, like they've been in New York for the World Cup, and they get loads of Mancs out there and stuff, so it's so nice to see that effect for the centre of town, but also the way it's going out into the boroughs as well. And it was quite a palpable thing. I can't remember the Northern Quarter looking like that for anything else. I mean, the sun helps, doesn't it, as well, and it was very nice, but the mural in the Northern Quarter as you go down like Thomas Street, that's like my lasting memory, and all the activations as well they had.
And it definitely helped on your commute to and from the park, which was a bit mad, wasn't it? And took a long time to get back and get out, but everyone was in such a good mood. And I think what you say about that atmosphere and how lovely it was, I was a bit worried that the actual gigs might be a bit too laddie, but there were, like you say, Diane, like grown men blubbing when it was a really emotional time.
It was emotional, but don't get me wrong, there was also laddie moments, wasn't there? I mean, we did get rather splattered, didn't we, Jenna, with the unknown substance,
which was the colour of cider, but I'll let people's imagination do more.
Yeah.
It was just upsetting, but I got over it because, as Diane said, that minute they walk out on the stage, you're like, I'm going to have to get over this. This is like bigger.
And that was because you got hit by a missile,
we say. I mean, it's a good aim wherever it came from.
Yeah.
Several rows back. I was like you. I thought, is this going to be proper laddie and a bit aggy with how I'd be describing it going into it? But actually, other than that, and it seemed quite nice. And there was a Poznan, and there's just really nice moments with the crowd and stuff. And I think I know a lot of people won't have been from Manchester that were there, but there were obviously a lot as well that were, and it felt very sort of interlinked and like very connected in a way that I've not seen at some gigs. So that was cool.
What about that image that first night at Heaton Park where they walked out and they were sort of holding hands and everything? What did that mean to fans? And
people sort of like, I'd look around at people and they were like, oh, like you could just see it was like Christmas had come or something. And I was a bit like, whoa, this is, you write about someone, you learn about someone, you grow up with people like this, especially in the music sphere, and you like to see them there was quite like, whoa, this is a bit out of body. And then it's the music chimes in and you're like, whoa, we're going. And it did feel like it was so well paced as well, and like so nicely done with the set, and you know, like the visuals, like Diane said, and even the celebs that were sort of to the side, to the right in the VIP bit, that was very cool as well. Like a very big moment, I think, for Manchester.
Yeah, who was there? Pep was there, wasn't he?
Pep was there. He accepted a bucket hat, actually. I remembered this before. Some lads were trying to throw him a bucket hat, but then they were sort of pestering him, so he was trying to pretend. like he couldn't see them anymore. There's loads of Man City players.
Yeah, like Phil Foden was there. He gave a shout out. He gave a shout out to Phil Foden and to Rodri. And I think you were saying before, weren't you? Like people did boo like the Man City references, but Liam was having none of it, was he?
No.
He was always standing up for City. Of course, there was the cardboard cutout of Pep, wasn't there, on stage? So again, what will they do now? Will Enzo get a cardboard cutout? I don't know. We'll have to see how he gets on, of course. But you know, for them, Manchester City is very key to their identity, isn't it? So the fact that was on stage every night, as well as the Irish flag as well, wasn't it? And that's that's obviously very key to them as well, and who they are and where they're from.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that Irish link. So obviously their mum, Peggy, is Irish, and they've always, it kind of felt a little bit more like an Irish band, really, than a Mancunian band. But it's those links between the two, isn't it, really, between Manchester and Ireland that they have galvanised in, I guess, their songwriting and their whole identity over the years.
I think it's very important to them, and they definitely showcase it. And I think Manchester, as a place that has had so many people from Ireland come over the years, and for a while that sort of stalled and stuff, and you'll see sort of our Irish bars, you didn't have as many, but that's really picked up again, and there is actually quite a young sort of cohort of people from Ireland coming over here, having careers, having families again, and I think that Oasis link does mean a lot to people. It's someone they can identify with that's got sort of dual like links, I guess, to two places. I think that's quite important, and musically that sort of resonates.
Do you think I mean, a lot of Manchester music, because it's kind of played so much in the student clubs like Fifth Ave and 42s when they existed, rest in peace, but you know, it's played such a lot. When you're a student and you come to Manchester, you really are bombarded with that, but then you kind of get into it. Are Oasis part of that, or is that more of the Smiths and the Stone Roses? Are Oasis a thing all of their own to do with kind of Britpop, do you think?
I think now, as I say, you can see the global reach of Oasis. And as I said before, I feel like, you know, just as Liverpool has the Beatles, Manchester has Oasis now, and they're a global brand, aren't they? Let's be honest. As are the Smiths and New Order, and you know, all these bands you can add into that list. But it all makes, if you talk of brand Manchester or Manchesterism, as we have been doing, it all makes Manchester this huge melting pot of creativity, doesn't it? And of cool, really.
Yeah. Going back to the gigs themselves at Heaton Park, I've got to say I've never seen a gig where people are wandering around literally with shopping bags full of merchandise. But they were, weren't they? Because there was like, I think everyone wanted a piece of it, didn't they, in a memento, and it was kind of such a special thing, and if you were in those gates, you were in. However, there were people who couldn't get in who made a big thing of it. So let's talk about Gallagher Hill. Can you explain what that was, Jenna?
Yeah, like we've said quite a few times, this is one of probably the most Mancunian elements of, you know, these gigs that they did. But effectively, as we knew, not everybody was going to get into Heaton Park, despite it being 5 gigs and almost 500,000 people. Obviously, demand is way higher than that. And so on the first night, second night, people started heading up to a vantage point, which looked directly out onto the stage. And you could hear it really crisp up there, because you could hear it over all of Prestwich, really. And it became a bit of a thing. It got spread on social media. It was on TikTok lives, being streamed, so people could watch it from all over the world and stuff. And it sort of took on sort of its own sort of thing, didn't it, really? It became its own sort of like phenomenon, I guess. And then as it went on, the council, not big fans of it, so they put up a fence, which then blocked
fans
the view.
of health and safety.
Yes,
council.
and that is important. It's always important, and someone's got to be that guy, don't they? You know, you can't always be popular. And they put up this fence, it blocked the view, and I think what the turning point, what made this such a big thing in the end, and why the national press were also interested, it was that people still went up. Like, it didn't matter that you couldn't see. It was like, no, I'm going to go up. I'm going to sort of disobey you. I'm going to do it. And they kind of couldn't do anything about it. And then to the point that Oasis loved it too, and they sent up a little buggy with Gallagher Hill T-shirts and tops up, and people wearing them. They printed off like 1,000 or something like that. Like, they were really into it.
And they gave them a shout out on stage, didn't they?
That's it. I mean, Liam and Noel, you know, they absolutely love Gallagher Hill, because I mean, what could be more Oasis really than kind of, you know, rebelling against the system and going up there on the hill. So yes, they got a shout out on stage, and like you've seen on their socials, you know, just quite recently, looking at the anniversary, that was one of the things that the band picked out as one of the big moments, because, you know, it's kind of the Oasis ethos, isn't it? You've got to make it happen, the song says, and that's what those fans did. But that also shows you what a hot ticket it was. You know, people were desperate to be at that gig, whatever it took, or to just be on the outside of the perimeters, you know, and just be there.
What about the set list? Is there anything that they missed out that you sort of hope will be at these next gigs, these rumoured gigs that we're almost definitely saying are happening?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of speculation online already, isn't there? I mean, again, all these fan sites now they sort of got the idea that there is going to be a tour next year, putting on what they want on the set list. I mean, for me, that was a dream set list that first time around, because it had everything that you could really want. It had all the big bangers, but also things like the Noel bit, with Talk Tonight, which is a personal favourite of mine. But, everyone's got their own favourites, haven't they? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There was a lot of the later albums that just nothing featured from those. So there's definitely room, something like Hindu Times I'd love to hear on there. So I don't know. I mean, they know, don't they? But I mean, there's some things that we're definitely going to make the set list, aren't they? So like Wonderwall, for example, Don't Look Back in Anger. These things, and Cigarettes and Alcohol, they're not going to go anywhere. But it will be interesting to see how things develop. And of course, are they recording new material? Noel at the Brits did say that he was in the recording studio this summer. So what is that for? Is that for himself? He's obviously successful as a solo artist, or is it for Oasis? We could see some major announcements from the band in the weeks ahead.
Yeah.
We've obviously got the big film premiere as well to look forward to. So I just think for Oasis fans, there's just so much to look forward to now the next few weeks. There's so much going to be happening.
I mean, hearing those iconic songs like Wonderwall on the night, it was just kind of a weird... There's a weird experience, like out-of-body experience, because they're so famous that but you hear it such a lot, and then that they're actually on stage playing it felt kind of surreal almost, didn't it, really? Because I guess so much legend is built up because they haven't been together for such a long time as well. So was there any particularly emotional moments for you on those nights?
Well, see, for me, they just sounded great as well. Liam sounded fantastic. He obviously was keeping himself in really good health the whole tour, wasn't he? He was staying away from the kind of party scene. He was just on it. He wanted to finish that tour. And he did. He was just brilliant. Every single night of that tour, everyone got Liam at the top of his game.
Yeah.
But the band sounded incredible as well, didn't it? It was the dream Oasis gig, I think, for many people. And so how do you better that now? I don't know.
Do you think he was aided by, didn't you write that there was a rumour that he had a neck fan on underneath his parka to keep him cool?
That was the thing, because obviously he had his zip-up parka the whole time. And you're like, it's so hot. But yeah, then someone said, it's because he's got one of them Amazon fans around his neck, which I've still not bought. I did mean to buy one, because I was like, I could do with one of them. But yeah.
Suffering from hot flashes.
It was very hot on stage, though, very hot.
So what's the lasting legacy been to the city? Jenna, you've got your stats. You love a spreadsheet.
I love a spreadsheet, I love stats. I just love sharing information, imparting knowledge. Financially, sort of an economic view, they estimate something like 25 million music tourists came into the UK for these gigs specifically. Yeah. Obviously, because of the run that they did, some people couldn't get tickets, for abroad or whatever. So that in itself is amazing. And then we had 5 shows at Heaton Park, and they think that the spending in the Northwest from sort of music fans was up 16% year on year for that, and that the contribution was into the billions basically for Manchester.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Which is just actually quite hard to fathom, from 5 nights, but it wasn't, as we've just said, wasn't just 5 nights. It was all that build up. It was the buying of the merch. It was going to restaurants and bars and clubs. It was staying in the city, the hotel sector. I think they were over 90% capacity the entire time. The amount of people staying in the city as well was so important. But one thing that stood out for me is that, and the council sort of commented on this, was that £250,000 from the sort of money that they made from these gigs went straight back to grassroots venues in the city. And I think as a team, we feel quite passionate about these smaller venues, these tiny places where people like Oasis get their start, whether it's,
back rooms of pubs
or underground bars or clubs on training estates, these sort of really kooky venues that you might only play to 10 to 20 people, but so many people, especially recently with the closures, have spoken about how key these venues are. You don't get Stone Roses or Oasis. You don't get the newer bands that we've got like Loftree Winners or Anthony Schmerick or Lathams. You don't get them without these venues. So I think Oasis is huge, but then to know that's trickled down and it actually has this time, I think that's really special.
And I think what's been interesting, Liam Gallagher fairly recently has announced that he's an ambassador now for a Manchester charity for Brighter Sound, which is a charity dedicated to helping people in Manchester get into the music industry and developing bands. And he's said very specifically in that role, he wants to help people like him and Noel, from working class backgrounds, because it's so hard for them still to get into the music industry. And the suggestion is there's going to be more from that relationship. So it's they're thinking about legacy now. They're thinking about what they can do to help the next Oasis.
Because as you said, he started in his bedroom in Burnage with a guitar, didn't he? And this quite incredible thing has happened, really, over the years.
That's, for me, what was emotional about those gigs, because you sit there and you hear all these songs, and you hear every single person in the crowd singing every single word.
Yeah.
And you think...
Shouting.
Well, shouting or yelling or screeching. But then you look on stage, Noel, he was, in his bedroom in Burnage, and it's all come from him. He's just, to me, he's a total genius. And he's touched the lives of all these people. It's the soundtrack of so many people's lives. And it comes from a place where I think everyone can feel like that was me, and, the struggle. And so that was really emotional, actually, on the night, I think.
It must have been really emotional for their mum as well, for Peggy. I mean, you could see people around Burnage sort of aimlessly wandering around with selfie sticks and bucket hats, desperately trying to find a house, which I think was heavily guarded at the time because, I'm sure she's a nice lady, but probably doesn't want a selfie with absolutely everybody. But, I mean, it must have been really kind of emotional for anyone who knows them and is close to them to see them together like that, as it was for the fans. What do we know about the current status of their relationship, Liam and Noel?
Well, we were saying, weren't we? I mean, we've pictures of them this year. We've seen them, and it's been lovely seeing them at all the Man City games. Like proper laughing at each other's jokes. Yeah. And that's what people want to see, isn't it? The brothers back together. And that's what we didn't really see that in the lead up to the gigs. They've been kept totally away from the media. Everyone in the press wanted that shot of Liam and Noel and Liam and Noel together. That's what everyone wanted. And we didn't get that until the opening night of the tour. Yeah. And even then it was a shadowy picture, wasn't it? Because we were desperately wanting it for the newspaper. And it was quite a shadowy picture, but they had their hands aloft together. And then, but throughout the tour, it was like people, again, a lot of the national press was speculating that they still weren't getting on, and would they finish the tour? But of course, we know that's all rubbish now because they did. But I'd say what's been lovely since then is they look so relaxed with each other. And I personally can't wait for the film, the Don't Look Back in Anger film that we know is coming out in September, because that's going to be the first time we actually see them talk about it together on screen. And also, I think probably we'll get Peggy as well, because Peggy was in the last documentary, wasn't she, in Supersonic? And it was lovely hearing her view on it all, because she just wants the brothers to be friends with each other, doesn't she? And I think that's what's been nice about it. There's just that human story behind it as well, isn't it, of just two brothers back together making magic on stage.
So this was obviously so special, the summer of Oasis, and they were back together after all that time. Are these gigs that we're anticipating next summer, are they going to be as special?
My opinion is that they're going to be just different. I think they're just going to be the same level, maybe even more, because now we've seen what they can do. There was a lot of scepticism and people not really believing that it would come off, and then it did. And as I've said about the tickets and stuff, you'll have the people that went that want to go again, the people that didn't get in that still want to go, and the people that were like disbelieving that it would actually happen and that it'd be any good. And as we said, they sung brilliantly, the production was brilliant, like the gigs went off very well and were really well received around the world. So I think they've got everyone's trust now. And then to be at the Etihad, which, okay, it's not main road, but it's, they both go there, and it is the home of City now, and the stadium is complete after having the North Stand finished off as well now, so it's ready for them to do those gigs. And it would be the same if they ended up doing Nebworth as well. I think those almost anniversary years, I think there'd be something quite special about that space. Like Heaton Park is brilliant. I think it's a great place for gigs. It's hosted many as an and Parklife as well. But I think the Etihad and the significance of that football stadium and their link to City would make it very special. And I can just imagine, like, they've already done this film, so they just think of all the opportunities off the back of that as well. So I think it'd be very cool.
Can I finish off by, because you've given me plenty of time, thank you very much, but by talking about some of your favourite Oasis stories, because they are good value, aren't they, both the brothers? They are both pretty funny. And we were doing quite a lot of stories about their background as well in the sort of weeks that they were on stage, but also in the weeks beforehand. I spoke to Liam's former primary school teacher, who said that he was a really good King Herod in Jesus Christ Superstar, which I thought was pretty cute, and a guy from Oasis, which is the tribute band, who said that they once knocked on Noel's door and said, "We're in Oasis, is Noel in?" And he said, I've heard of you. Do you want to come to our gig? No, absolutely not. Which is blunt, but quite funny, isn't it? So are there any of those kind of stories that really stick with you?
I was just thinking before, it's just the amount of time I've spent trawling Liam Gallagher's Twitter, now X account, because he's prolific. Like he's such a wind up as well, but he interacts with everybody, and I just really rate it. It's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that was my main special subject last year, was his Twitter account. And my favourite thing was when he put out those Roman numerals, which apparently meant something, and I was like frantically trying to like remember my Roman numerals, but also like put the pieces together. I was like on subreddits, like subreddits within subreddits. I've never been down such a rabbit hole, but I was just so obsessed with Liam Gallagher's like Twitter that it's ridiculous. I was thinking about a separate time when Noel Gallagher, well, we've both spoken to them individually for previous interviews way before this, and I did come to mind before when I don't know if he accidentally, but sort of insulted my name when I introduced myself, and he asked me what kind of name is that, and I really politely went, "Oh, it's my name," like really feebly, as if I was so sorry.
Excuse me.
But I think it just shows the sort of like star power that they both have and stuff, and like that was like a few years before this was even potentially on the table and stuff. So I just think it's the sort of star power of both of them, you know, and as a collective, that it's just really interesting and funny to cover. It is like, as much as we have written so much, they're like hundreds of articles, like it is still very funny to write about it. At least they bring a lot of that sort of like energy to it. They're not a dull band by any stretch.
No. So no time for Oasis, no time for Jenna Campbell.
No,
sadly.
Well, you made 20 minutes.
Or your name, anyway.
Oh, my name, my horrible name.
Yeah. What about you, Diane? Are there any moments?
What was nice, I think, you know, everyone kind of had their Oasis stories, didn't they? But to speak to some of the people who were around them in the early days, like John Robb, we were just talking about before, he obviously did the interview, didn't he, at Mr. Sifters, and obviously we spoke to Mr. Sifters as well, didn't we?
That's the record shop, isn't
the
it?
record
They
shop
went to in
Burnage, and of course it's mentioned in one of the songs, isn't it? But yeah, just, and the fact that like Liam Gallagher in the early days was actually quite shy, which you can't quite imagine now, can you? But yeah, and they were just so dedicated in those early days as well, rehearsing at the boardwalk, and some of the bands who were rehearsing there with them, remembering them being quite cheeky chappies as well, like playing pranks and turning the lights off and that kind of thing. But even then, I think people were saying, you know, they could see the star potential because they were just so focused on being these rock and roll stars, and then look at what that's done. They've achieved their goal, haven't they?
They really have. And if they are at the Etihad, you know, it'll be so exciting for them personally, won't it? As like massive City fans. I mean, Liam's neck fan will explode in excitement, surely, won't it?
Maybe. Well, it might not be as hot next year. You never know. But you know,
We'll
global warming.
We'll see. That's another podcast, I think. Right, I think that's a lovely place to leave it. Diane, Jenna, thank you so much for joining me.